Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Whitman-Hanson Regional School Committee meeting of February 26, 2025. Reminder that we are being recorded, televised, and recorded by WHCA. If everybody would please join me, Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
No comment.
No public comment. Thank you. Okay, so auditor is not here yet. She's stuck in traffic. So, ladies, if you would like to be first tonight and present.
Hello, hope you all are doing well tonight. We have a little bit of a brief update of what we have been working on and then what's to come soon. So for the middle school, we have reached out to the principals of each middle school with the help of Dr. Jones, and we are planning the best day to speak with the middle school students. We'll be talking to the students about what student advisory is, their middle school experience, and address any questions concerning their future at Whitman-Hanson High School. We are hoping to find one individual to be our inside look into middle school and work with us to improve their experience and community. We have talked to Mr. Belvis and are planning to go to Hanson Middle on March 18th, where we will present and speak with each grade individually. The information we receive from our visit will be incorporated in our formal presentation that we are planning to give during the March meeting.
Hi everyone, thank you for having us. Our next thing is our spring cleanup that we've been planning. We planned a event taken on March 21st is our date right now, a half day. We will host a school-wide cleanup around the high school campus. Students will be encouraged to stay after school and volunteer to help make the campus a bit neater as we enter into spring sports season. This will also be a great community service opportunity as well for students needing hours for extracurriculars such as National Honor Society, which we reached out to today and was approved by Mr. Dunn that they could help. And I also, in student advisory, reached out to Riley Miller, a past postgraduate, who will be coming to collect bottles for Rocket Rally's redemption again.
Hi. Next is our trash barrels. One of our goals this year was to supply more trash cans along the junior path as well as out by the overflow parking to the tennis court. We have reached out to Mike Driscoll, the district operations coordinator, and he promptly replied that he is in full support of our idea. He is aware of a few extra trash barrels and he and his team plan to implement them into the places we requested very shortly. With the addition of just a few more trash barrels, we are hoping to limit the amount of trash left around the junior path and the campus as a whole.
At the beginning of the school year, we noticed that the bathrooms on the second and third floor are not as bright and colorful as the bathrooms on the first floor. After realizing this, we wanted to make the decoration of other bathrooms one of our priorities. Thankfully, Mr. Simonak as well as Mr. Driscoll have offered us the paint to get this project underway. We are also hoping to get some help from students enrolled in art classes here at the high school and also Miss Mara, the art teacher. And we're hoping to paint after school before April break.
Nice.
All of these events are going to be advertised through posters around the school as well as on our Instagram page. If you guys do not follow us already, you can scan the QR code, which we will bring to you. To finalize this plan, we have scheduled a meeting with Dr. Jones for this Friday to continue the progress of all of these events, as well as confirming junior privileges and courtyard access during WIN, coming up this spring. Thank you so much for your time, and do you guys have any questions for us?
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Very good. Glad to hear that everything is coming together.
Yes.
Now, does anybody have any questions for the girls? Any questions?
Can I just add their commitment and dedication to their goals is just outstanding. I met with them on Monday, and all I do is show up, and they just tell me everything that they've been doing. And we did bring in Mr. Simonak, superintendent, so that was really helpful. So thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, folks. Just 2 minutes while Jennifer sets up.
Yeah.
Jen, just let us know when you're ready. We have the presentation queued up. I just want you to get settled as soon as you're ready. And we can go to minutes.
Okay, might as well do the minutes then. Okay, approval of meeting minutes from January 15th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any omissions, deletions, questions? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay, approval of meeting minutes from January 27th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, second by Glenn. Any questions? Any omissions, deletions? Okay, all in favor? Very good. Okay.
Chair,
Yes,
I'm going to abstain.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask for abstentions. I asked
January
for everything else.
27th, because I was not in attendance.
I asked for everything else, but deletions, omissions, and I didn't abstention. Okay, are you ready, Jen? Okay.
My apologies.
No worries, Jen. So tonight we have Jennifer Cook from Clifton Larson Allen, our audit firm. Seems like we've talked a lot over the past couple months, trying to rectify some of our audits that were delayed because of our technology breach. Jen's here. You have the audit report in your packet, but Jennifer's also going to do a presentation if you want to follow along on the screen. So thanks so much. She's going to talk a little bit about our audit here and then what FY23 audit looks like.
Yep,
Thank you,
perfect.
Jen.
Great, thank you so much. If you want to go to the next slide. Just
Pull the
quickly.
mic closer to you, Jen. Can you pull the mic?
Thank you, that better. Sorry, thank you. So just agenda items. I'll talk a little bit about the audit scope, what we were engaged to do, what our audit opinions were, the single audit status, our required governance communications, and really the 2023 audit plan and impacts related to that audit. So next slide. So we were engaged to provide an opinion on the financial statements, as well as provide a report on internal controls over financial reporting. We have our required governance communication, and then related to the single audit, which is your federal spending, a report on internal controls over the compliance with major programs, as well as an opinion on the compliance over those federal program spendings. In addition, if we observe management recommendations, we issue that letter as well. So next slide. So happy to report we did issue an unmodified opinion on the 2022 financial statements. And then related to internal controls, we did not have material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified. Related to the federal awards, that is still in process. And so given the time when we wanted to prioritize getting the financial statements out, and then we are working through the single audit. And so happy to come back if I needed to present on that, but we will report those findings or those conclusions to management once completed. Next slide. Just so you know what we're currently auditing, which is your special education cluster, the ESSER program, and the child nutrition cluster, which is school lunch program. Great. Next. All right. So governance communication, I believe this should be in your packet as well. If it's not, you should have received a separate letter. And so just overall related to here, accounting policies for the district are disclosed in note 1 of the financial statements. We did not identify any significant or unusual transactions. There was a new GASB standard, which is related to leases, and we did not identify any impact for the financial statements for 2022. Related to estimates, there's 3 significant estimates that we identified. Your net pension liability. So we review the assumptions around how that's calculated, as well as reviewing census data information. Same with net OPEB liability. And the last is just the useful life of your capital assets. Related to difficulties, I wouldn't say difficulties, was obviously related to the data, the technology issues. The audit was significantly delayed, and we've been working closely with management and getting that rectified. So I really appreciate all the efforts of management, because this was no easy task to create these financial records for us to be able to audit. We did not have any disagreements with management and no consultations with other accountants or any other consultants. I'm going to pause there for any questions. I'm not getting into any of the financial information just because of the age of the financials. I'm assuming you know where 2022 ended up. So, yep.
Back to the federal award
Yes.
that you said is in process. What's the timeline on that, on when?
So we're hoping that, I'll get into the 2023 timeline, so we're going to be doing them simultaneously. So my hope is that we would issue this in March or April, if we can get through the remaining testing.
Okay. Of 2025?
Yes.
of April? Okay.
Yes, yep,
Because
yep.
we're several
We are
years-
in the middle, and it was a lot harder on the federal audit side because we have to get down to the much more granular level. And so I know compiling all the information for us to test is taking a little bit longer on the financial, so we wanted to reprioritize our time.
Okay, so just to confirm, so the FY22 federal awards, you'll produce those findings along with the FY23?
Yeah, if I can do it earlier, I'll do that, but my plan would be that they would be in conjunction. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Actually, I have one more follow-up.
Yeah.
On the previous slide, you talk about the management letter.
Yes.
Is that something we've received already, or is that?
No, so that will be, we typically issue that with our single audit as well. So we'll go through if there's any observations and walk through that with management, provide opportunity to respond, and then we can report that out. So we have not issued our management letter yet either.
Okay, for the FY22 audit?
Correct.
Okay, so that'll
Yep.
be forthcoming?
Yep. So we issued our what we call the Yellow Book report, which is we didn't identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. So management would really be best practices or things that we didn't really think rose to a significant level.
So in other words, you didn't find any big issues or anything like that? Any,
Correct.
Just suggestions for what could be done better?
Yep.
Anybody else with questions so far? Okay.
Great. Next slide. So now into the 2023 financial statement audit plan. Obviously, we've worked closely to get us back on track here. So we've been doing some preliminary procedures, kind of audit readiness assessments in February. We did get the trial balance, and the commitment from the district is to get us all our requests by the end of this month, and then we will be kicking off our field work within March, and with the hope of wrapping up in April. I put April, May for final issuance just in case we run into any issues, but I wanted to make sure that it was a realistic timeline here. Just as it relates to the 2023 audit, we saw some changes in auditing standards, and so it really enhanced our testing around estimates as well as IT. So understanding the complexities related to IT and the risk, and obviously the district's well aware of what can happen, and so it requires us to dig a little bit deeper into the IT controls. And so that's the big changes that you'll see related to a 2023 audit. Next slide. There's two GASB pronouncements that are effective for the 2023 audit, which is GASB 94, which we do not see any impact for the district. And then the last one, GASB 96, is technology-based information arrangements. This we will have to review with management, understanding what long-term contracts might be in place, which would require to report an asset and a corresponding liability for those long-term contracts. So we do not know the impact yet. Next slide, and that's all I had. I know it was pretty brief, but I wanted to open up for any other questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions that are not necessary for Jen, but for Jeff or anything about this? Yes, go ahead.
In the big document, Jeff, on page 49, it says under note 17 contingencies, various legal actions and claims are pending against the district. I'm not asking for specifics today in open meeting, but if that's something the committee needs to know about, and I don't know if that's relevant back to 2022 at the time, would your note have reference?
I can answer this question. This is like a required disclosure that there is risk that something can come back, not something that we observed, or that, it's just, you're talking about the contingencies?
Yeah, because it says
Okay.
various legal actions and claims are pending against the district in note 17. So I guess I'm addressing.
Oh, okay. Yep, I apologize.
If that's something the committee
So
should be.
one of the things we did speak about in exec session already,
Okay,
a couple, like last month,
okay.
and we're always open to that litigation, but we do have a pending right now that we spoke about.
Okay.
But I don't know if this is referenced because this is looking at 22.
Right, and I think that's the distinction I was
Yep.
looking for.
I understand. So I don't think I think that's a statement that somebody could bring anything to us even from years past correct?
Right, right, and it could have already been, yep. And typically, if we found anything that we would see as concern and recorded a liability, then it would be disclosed differently. This is just saying there are things out there, nothing that we think is probable of any type of claim, so.
And part of that too, in 22, we did have the breach, which we had to go with a different attorney to make sure staff who might have been affected were covered with an outside agency and credit monitoring. So that could have come back as well.
Okay.
But at this point, I can say that we're not there from 22, but there might be something in the future.
Okay. And then I think my last question is regarding, previously we've had audits of the student activity. It was a student activity audit proposal done back in 2021. Is that something that you have?
We have most of the information. Again, we have been kind of reprioritizing to make sure your financials were on track, but that is on our list of agreements to get done.
At some point for student activity
Correct.
Yep.
audit. Thank you.
Yep.
Rosemary, did you have a question?
That's okay, she asked it for you. Okay.
John's thorough. Thank you, Don.
Anybody else have any other questions? You good?
So I look forward to seeing you at the end of April, back again.
Yep.
I hope.
Yep.
Always.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jennifer.
All right, thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming out. Okay. Jeff, your district report card.
Mr. Farrell?
Evening, folks. I was asked just to give you a little update on the school and district report cards, what that is, what that means, and then where they can be found, and then what's our responsibility for that. So every year, the Massachusetts Department of Ed and Secondary Education, they release a report card for each school in the state and then for the district as a whole. Just as a student's report card shows how they're doing in classes, school and district report cards are designed to show parents and community members how a school or a district is doing in various different areas. Report cards highlight a school's strengths as well as any challenges that may need to be addressed in order to make sure all the students are being met. Massachusetts families and community are important partners, and this is from DESE, obviously, and what they do is that they use these cards. They're hopefully, parents spend time reading them, listening to them, and the report cards are designed to be very easy to use and provide meaningful information. So what takes place is that they are written for people who are not necessarily involved in the business of education. So there are a lot of graphs, they put names in, and they cover several topics. The topics that they cover are, the first one is, who are our students and teachers? So they do that for every district, and then they break that down for every single school in the district. And when they talk about who are our students and teachers, they're really talking about what is the enrollment of the school, what is the demographic makeup, and what is the teacher info. They also then answer a question, or one of the headings is, what are the academic opportunities available to our students? So that are the classes. That really, from a high school level, is the broadest one, because everything else is the four cores, basically, that take place. They also talk about student attendance and discipline, so they've pulled that. What does it look like for students for success after high school? So that measures your graduation rates, your dropout rates, and the post-secondary not needs, but the post-secondary plans of all seniors in high school. They talk about how our students perform on state tests, so they go over bar graphs, pie graphs, charts on MCAS and things of that nature. They have another topic that talks about student, district school spending. And then the last one is, how is the districts doing in the state accountability system? So for every one that they do, they are all located on the DESE website under school and district profiles. So if you were to go there, you see Whitman-Hanson, you see the district, then you see all the individuals. But there's also a responsibility that schools have. So it's funny because the date never really jives when the state tells you they're going to load it, but it is on or about January 25th this year. A week later, it was loaded. So you would go to the school and district profiles, you'd click on Whitman-Hanson, you'd click on the year 2024, and it would have been there. Once the report cards are there, the school's responsibility is to make sure that they provide a letter home to every person in the district, and we did that early February through school status, telling them exactly what to click on to see their schools. Now, they get to see the district, and they get to see every school that they would like. Once we send that letter home, we also have to have that letter and a link posted on our website. So for anyone that, well, and they're voluminous papers all in color, so I did not bring those, but we posted it, we've let all our families know, and the link can be found on the district's document page at www.whitmanhanson.org, district information, district documents. So that's where it can be found. So anyone who wants to go look at it, there's a letter from me, there's all the links to every single school in the district, and then you can see what it is. What's nice about it is when you get to 2024s, you can go all the way back to 23, 22, 21, 20, and you can see trends and you can see what's taking place. This has been going on the school and district profiles for probably the last, well, Ellen Stockdale, since about 2008, I think was when it really began in this fashion. But it's a snapshot that everybody gets to see and look at. If people do have questions, the letter also says that they are first to contact their school's principal, and if they have questions about the district aspect of it, they contact the office of the superintendent. But that's what they are, that's what it is. It's a mandate, and we fulfill the mandate yearly, and it's based on all of the information that DESE collects from our students and from our infinite campus system of all the reports that we have to put together for them.
George, was there anything surprising that stood out to you in the report?
I would say that what's funny is when you look at, for me personally, having been in the district for so long, although we talk about budget a lot and we never have enough to add actually real program, like more programs, we have steadily increased at least our per pupil expenditure from previous years of stagnation. So that was good to look at. Also good to see are the dropout and the graduation trends and the plans of our seniors. When you get to, again, it's a better snapshot of the high school because they provide more information for the high school students. When you get to the elementary schools and the middle schools, there's even one for preschool. It's kind of like, okay, well, it says the principal's name. It says, who they are, the number of students, but it doesn't really give you a lot of oomph. It is also good, though, as a tool if, I think one of the greatest tools is if you're not in education, but you're having a family and you don't know where you want to live, and you were in a 2-tenement house and you want to buy a house somewhere in a neighboring town, it does provide you with great information as to the makeup of schools, what the kids are doing, what the offerings are, how much money the town invests in the per pupil, and it also gives you specific names of the active principals there. And so then you can click on them, get a email right there, and if you have further questions, you can move forward. But it's for people who just want a snapshot of what's taking place. It's nothing as granular as we talk about here. But it's a mandate, and that's what we do.
Thank you. Rosemary?
Just quickly, the increase in student spending per student, so we hear a lot about declining enrollment, is still below average?
Yes.
But great job to, I wasn't here really passing budget, but great job to the committee that did recognize that it was, not appropriate. And Jeff, for pushing forward to increase that and start to recognize the children's needs. Because, we was stagnant for a long time, but it isn't anything, we still have work to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that, it's like, it's slow, but it's moving.
It's finally moving.
And we're moving in the right direction.
Correct.
So there's been a steady increase from 2018 to 2024, a gradual increase in per pupil. We're still not catching up to the state, and we're not close to our technical schools or agricultural schools in per pupil spending.
Right.
But we're not in the bottom 5 anymore. Because we used to be in the bottom 5 of the state. We're in the bottom third. I'd like to get us out of the bottom third to the middle of the road at some point.
Just a quick reminder, the state gives us state aid so that we can all be average. We're supposed to be providing that average education. So just a quick reminder to that. So a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, George.
Wait a minute, George. Oh,
Not so much a question for you, George, but more a comment. It being budget season, if those of us on the committee haven't looked at this, I just put it in and pulled up Whitman-Hanson High School, because I think you're right, the high schools offer, they can get more data that way. It does the school, the district, and then the state of Massachusetts, and just, we're talking about budget and what we spend. So it says access to digital literacy and computer science courses. So in 2024, our percentage was, at the high school, was 13.6% compared to 38.3% in the state of Massachusetts. So 20-ish percentage points less than the average in Massachusetts, to your point. It's got advanced coursework completion, passing, mass core completion. It has a lot of information that, like, for our school, like, looks good, but then when you look at the bar graph for the state, you're like, wow, we are kind of not where, we're not close to the average. So this would be great. I know, I did receive that email, but for people outside, if you're on this committee and you haven't looked at this, it's very eye-opening, but also to get it out more for budget season, to be like, look, this is where we are, to your point.
Yeah, another point is to have that little of investment and to have kids still doing pretty good.
Yep.
You got to credit the teachers. I'm sorry, that means there's people are actually working and really putting in more work everywhere else. So you've got to take that and remember that it's labor that's doing that.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. So next up, and we don't have to approve this, but it's a draft of 2025, 2026 calendar. So we usually do this in February or March. I'd like to get it voted on by the end of March. But tentatively, right now, we're looking at a start date of August 27th for students. Moving forward, and then everybody wants to hear, well, what's the last day then? So we're looking to June 15th as our last day of school. We do not have school on Election Day, the 4th of November, and winter break is going to be long this year, starting on the 22nd of December, and students will return to school on January 5th.
Oh, nice.
Of note, also, we did schedule school for a half day on Good Friday again this year because of the long vacation of the 22nd till the 5th.
You couldn't get that last day to be the 12th somehow?
Yeah.
First thing I thought too.
Well, I think,
Come back on Monday.
I think for, because it's a half day everywhere, right? That the last day of school is a half
Yes.
day? So teaching, whatever, we're going in, it is, but like, if you want kids to go, like, that's a hard sell.
So the only way I can move something around here is if we come to school on Election Day. And we could do a half day on Election Day.
Or January 2nd.
Friday. That's Friday. And
One day.
that's where I'm
Sounds good to
stuck.
say.
I
Yeah,
know.
that's where I'm stuck. But Election Day is the 4th, and it's not a large election this year, I don't believe. Where's Bill Tranter? He knows but I don't think it's a gubernatorial election. It's not a state senate election. It's going to be an election. It's an election day, but I don't know if it's going to have the impact. And the only place that votes is Hanson Middle School. And that's the reason we don't come to school on Election Day, is because of an election. This, again, we can talk about this and I can get some more information, but I could move that back and we can end on that Friday if we come to school on
But
Election.
you might have snow days anyway.
Right, right.
If you think about it differently too, you also could not go to school, like Good Friday doesn't lead into April break this year. So not this coming calendar you're looking at, you could not have school on Good Friday, back to the traditional way we did it, get out on the Tuesday, so at least you'd have to come back for the Monday.
Monday, Tuesday.
You're going to bump into, though, Juneteenth if you do have a
snow
couple of
days.
snow days, which is going to throw another bump, but it is food for thought if you.
So again, these are the talking points that, you have another couple weeks to decide. I just wanted to show you where we're at. And this is a unique year around winter break. The teacher's contract, if the 22nd or 23rd fall on a Monday, there's no school. That's contractual. So that's why we're not coming to school on the 22nd. And then I don't see a reason to open up the district on Friday, the 2nd of January. So, Glenn has a question.
Oh, Glenn, sorry.
So on election day, all schools closed?
Everything's
Because
closed
you
in
have an
district.
election at one school?
Yes.
Correct.
You have to have the same service for
I
everything.
get that, but that's a choice?
It's a difficult, yes.
I have a question for Hanson person.
Yeah,
If it's
wait
a small
Wait a minute.
election.
Glenn.
So, yeah, so that's,
That just seems,
Yeah, we
they should
always
be going
say
to school.
that. Yeah.
so
That day.
we usually don't, I mean, if it's a presidential or a senator.
Sure, I can see that.
So this is why we we could move it.
Yeah.
You know, and go to school that day. Because I don't, even though Hanson's a polling place, if there's not a lot going on, the traffic, like last September, we had a local election or a statewide election. The traffic in Hanson, I think they had 112 voters all day long at Hanson Middle School, but we didn't have school that day. So,
Beth, what is,
You can go ahead, your hand.
yeah, it's just quickly about, if it's a small election, could they possibly have it at the library, or would that be too confusing to change a polling? There's not, they couldn't make a polling place?
and that would be up to the town clerk anyway.
Yeah, town clerk, Kara?
So I know it's probably some different opinions about this. When the last, I think, small election in Hanson Middle, my kids were at Hanson Middle, and I actually had some real concerns about having school that day. One, it was disruptive to instruction, even with a small group, because the gym is not available. More importantly for me, I feel like it's a safety and security issue in buildings. I just feel like school safety is so important right now, and I just think like a metal gate doesn't feel to me safe enough when, like in my building, you need to give your ID and have a badge and be walking around, and all the doors are locked. So for me, even though it's probably, I agree, very small amount of people that would be filtering through, it does concern me. I know also I had an issue with whoever was picking up my children that day, like the parking and navigating in and around there was also difficult. So I would prefer not to have that be the case. I would love for Hanson to, as the town, to look into alternative polling options. I know we're limited in what we have, but I think we could be creative about that, but I would prefer not if it's going to be at the middle school that kids aren't there that day.
And and that was the reason, so that there's like 2 or 3 issues in my 5 years, and that was one that we received the most parent concerns. And I'm right with you. I think that it is very concerning that there are strangers walking in and out of the building and distracting. I mean, the kids are in those classrooms right there too, and they're walking, they're looking, they're seeing, can kids go outside for recess? Like, that's a concern. The gym's not available for students. Everything you said, I think, I just don't, again, it'd be cool if there was an alternative place, but there isn't, and it is what it is, and we need to make sure that the kids are safe and parents feel safe sending their kids too.
So we're leaning away, and I agree with you. Those are legitimate, leaning away from just not having a school day at all that day, right?
As is, right, and we just took the day off.
I got one more question. Is there a police officer posted the entire day?
Yes.
Just so, I agree with you about safety.
Yeah, more than one.
Usually 2.
More than one.
Usually 2.
Just to have all the information, all the facts.
Yep.
Can I ask one other question? And I feel like by the end of the day, Wednesday, my brain is a little mushy, so I apologize. I don't think it would actually work out, but I will say that in my district, something that was that we explored, and I don't know what it would mean from a negotiations union standpoint, was moving Teacher Professional Day to the Friday the 2nd. And then alternating. I don't think it would end up I still don't think it would end up making a difference for 180 days getting you to the 12th, right? But I just think that was another kind of thing that we explored in terms of getting some time in, I guess.
So again, we can look at that, we can pause, or if somebody's ready to make a motion, we can vote on it. You can always amend that as we go, but for parents, the sooner they get the calendar for the start of school and the end of school, the sooner they can start making preparations. I thought this year was going to be, and I'm going to jinx myself, but I thought this year was going to be a snowy year. It hasn't
we
been.
got
It's
a way
been-
to go,
It's been a little icy. Once I hit March, I know we're not going to get the 7-day blizzard. We have sun out there now.
April Fool's blizzard.
That was a couple days though, right? Well, I remember that. But I think that's, we always worry about that, and with the inclusion of the holiday of Juneteenth, try to make sure that we're trying not to go into that week of the 20th.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Dawn.
Just a comment.
It looks like there aren't as many Friday early releases in this calendar as has been in the past. Is that true? Is that a change?
Well, we haven't put in, we did put in, no, I'm not sure.
We haven't put in parent-teacher.
We haven't put in conferences,
We do that on Wednesday with our administrative staff after we've had a first look. So we'll fill in those pieces as we go.
and we haven't put in grading days.
Oh, so those will be added to the
Yes.
calendar? Okay, because November looked light to me, because you know the cliche about November.
That'll be grading day and that'll be conferences.
Okay, so there will be additional, so maybe we
Again,
wait on voting it
Sure.
until it has, okay.
One more.
Yes, go ahead, go on.
Extended school year program begins, is that a nice way of saying summer school?
well, it's different. So for our special education students, they do have an extended school year.
Okay.
Summer school students are different. It's a different piece of it.
Is that on the calendar?
We haven't set the summer school schedule yet. We have to see who fails
So
first.
that is not summer school?
No, extended school year is every year, and the district has to
Okay.
offer that to K-12 students.
Got it. Question.
Could you move the seniors' last day to like April, please?
April 1st?
Thank you.
Right. She's already, she's getting ready for 17 snow days next year, right? You know. And again, for you to see where graduation falls next year, and you're in May, you're one of the few that ends up in May. So,
So he's doing that for you?
yeah, right? That's your
March what?
Memorial Day weekend?
We had no snow days my
It's
senior
the
year.
weekend before.
30th?
The Memorial Day is the 25th,
Okay.
so we graduate after that. And then-
God, anytime I see his snow, it's only things about.
And again, we're trying to get the student, or the 15th is 2 weeks afterwards, given snow days where we end up, we should be okay. So again, if there's no motion, we can do this at the next meeting, it's fine.
Does everybody agree next meeting? So we have all the other information? Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, folks. So we did have a resignation on our negotiations. Dawn let us know that she was resigning from negotiations due to some commitment issues, which leaves Stephen. I did have a conversation with Cindy and Kevin, and they can speak to this as well. It's up to the committee if we want to replace Dawn. We have made significant progress on the contract, so the committee can volunteer someone, or someone can volunteer to finish out where we're at. But we have made some progress, and again, it's up to the committee. It's in a different circumstance.
Yes, because we were discussing that, and you'd have to catch that person up to whatever has gone on for the past several months that they have been already negotiating, so.
I have a history not only of what's gone on in the last couple of months, but having had family as teachers in the district, I have a history of when teachers took lost years. I mean, I have a long history, probably more so. I'm going to be on this committee for the longest. I mean, everybody's going to be elected going in, but guaranteed the longest. I'd be happy to volunteer to go in, and if John wants to talk to me and catch me up, if that's permissible for just what's going on in this particular, I'd be happy to go in and do that. And maybe, Stephanie, would you like to take my position with Unit
B.
Unit B? Yeah, Unit B?
On the spot.
So
I don't want to force anybody's hand.
Right.
No.
So we have a vacancy here. We would have to bring the new person up to speed, which I could do, it's not a problem. And our next we negotiate, right now, you guys, it's next Tuesday is our next one, at 4 o'clock, and we meet on Tuesdays for 2 hours, 4:30. 4:30 for 2 hours. And right now, we have 2 meetings scheduled, and they're always on Tuesdays. So that's the piece. And I should have said that at the beginning. If you're unavailable on a Tuesday, you're out of the picture, because that's the date that we've agreed to through our ground rules.
So I would make a motion to appoint Rosemary as my replacement. So that's, thank you. And if I may, discussion. Based on the 10 of us on this committee, and that Mr. Boyce is on that negotiations and I've resigned, aside from 2 folks who are educators and can't sit on that, or I don't know about can't or aren't, Rosemary is the only other remaining candidate or elected official here that's not up for re-election. And I think that
but, yeah.
You can't do it.
So I think for practical reasons, but I also believe in her knowledge base. And I don't misunderstand, she said she has insight to the last 4 months. These have been executive sessions, so
Yeah.
there has been no
Nothing between
disclosure.
us.
No, I
That's
think
what
she's just saying she's been.
That raised a few eyebrows back then, so
Oh, no,
just
we're
have to be very
careful
careful.
with that.
Full disclosure, there has not been communication.
Any updates for that would have to be done
At our meeting.
At a meeting,
Yeah, with Mr. Boyce.
Can't meet with her.
Oh, no.
Can't do that.
Okay, that's fine.
on the side, yes.
And through
And not from me, it would really be through Mr. Boyce, because I'm not on the committee.
really want to keep it
Right.
above board, so thank you.
Any tentative agreements with me.
Are solid, yes.
Yeah.
So you have a
that's-
motion in a second.
That's
Okay.
discussion.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
This is for Unit A.
Unit A.
Right.
Okay.
And then
You're still locked into B.
I got B and.
You're still locked into B unless.
Yeah, but you'll have the knowledge base.
Unless that changes, unless you want to resign that piece of it.
I want to resign from that piece of it and.
We haven't started yet, we can do that later on, but just as a keep
Just hold
Rosemary
on,
wants you
we'll do
to
that.
evaluate.
Let Stephanie really think
Yeah.
on it.
Because we haven't done anything there, we haven't decided a date yet, we haven't decided anything yet. So I think that would be
And we all
premature.
have to remember, everybody's up for election.
Re-election, yeah. I'll do it if,
Jeez Louise.
I highly doubt them.
You'll get on. I'm D.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're deep.
It's
Madam
like,
Chair,
yes,
I
sir.
haven't really had a conversation with Ms. Byers. You know, I think between now and May, I'm slowly going to become sadder and sadder, and that's in all honesty. I just adore Dawn. She's taken me under her wing a few times. She's helped me on a few things. With
Stop it.
understanding.
Start your letter,
Save it for May. Save it for May.
Group that we have with the subcommittee
Yeah.
is it's just another highlight, and I really appreciate what you've done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love working with you.
Oh, you still
We
need time.
saved the rest of the day, but I gotta get that out.
We'll meet over at Regal.
well, welcome.
Oh, yeah, over at Regal, that's,
I'll brief you before our meeting on Tuesday, and we'll go from there, all right? Let you guys know. Yes. Yep, that's what we'll have it ready to go.
Get you guys done.
District happenings, if I may. I just want us as a committee to continue to show support to our staff members that are working through some significant health issues, and we have more than a few. And I just found out we have more than 5 of our students in the district that have significant illness as well. Some life-threatening. Please keep these folks in their families in your thoughts and prayers as we go, and I'll update you as we progress. I'm also pleased to recognize for the first time in a long time, and maybe never, Whitman-Hanson had 3 of the 4 MVPs for our athletic teams this year that are in the power rankings. So Dylan Perot for boys basketball, Malia Perrier for girls basketball, and Nick Zakaria for hockey, and all of those teams are in the tournament. Hockey's playing right now, and Nick is our goalie and is phenomenal. So hopefully they can progress forward. The unified basketball game was held on the 14th, the day before vacation, attended by the high school. I think I sent you all photos from that. It was one of the best. It's one of the best events we do because the school comes together to support our non-traditional athletes playing with traditional students, and it was just
And who was a
great time.
wonderful player.
Yeah, her grandson doesn't miss. He doesn't miss, and I kept sending her pictures. He just doesn't miss. He's going to be a future Celtic. So that was a great event.
And he's coming off the bench for the Celtics.
I just want to update you about the Board of Education that I got from today. So the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, that's not DESE, approved to increase enrollment of 225 seats for South Shore Charter yesterday. The school's growth plan is to increase enrollment from 1,075 students to 1,300 students, and will begin next year, FY26, and be completed by 2030. That affects not only us, but about 14 other communities where students go there. And remember, we pay tuition to South Shore Charter. So we, as a group of superintendents, kind of said, we're okay with the seats that you have right now because it has a financial impact on us, but the board voted 6-4 yesterday to increase South Shore Charter. They also didn't approve different charters across the state, but I wanted to be specific for you that they're up by 275 seats in the next 4 years.
Great.
Last question.
Yeah,
Karen.
Kara, too. Glenn, you have one first?
Sure.
So that affects us as in we would be paying for any additional students that go there.
Correct.
How many is that evenly distributed between other towns? So we could somehow get all of them.
Correct.
And that would be
Bad.
very bad.
Yeah, so the
If you
state,
had no choice in this, they could just,
yes. I don't even know if they apply.
what do you,
We don't even know if they apply. We just get a bill.
It's not like South Shore.
oh, we don't even know who applies on top of it.
No, we just-
No, I meant the increase in the students. Do you have any say in?
We voted, so
You allow-
local superintendent sent a letter to the Board of Ed saying, please don't, especially in this
Okay.
financial climate.
But they can do it anyway.
They did it, they voted 6-4 yesterday.
Okay.
So the piece about charter school is we do get a reimbursable for that, but it goes back and forth. So I was saying at our RAC meeting today, the state gives us X amount of dollars in Chapter 70 money, and it's a little more than last year. However, our charter school tuition is more than it was last year.
Is it a net loss every time?
Yeah, it's not a win for us.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons, and we talked about this even when we got full day K, and some of the reasons parents were going to South Shore Charter was for kindergarten, because it was free. We got that, our population at South Shore Charter has declined, which is good, but with additional seats, I don't know if they just didn't get in or didn't apply in time. So I just wanted to share that with the committee, because it affects everybody around. And it's a good school, don't get me wrong, but it affects, anytime it affects me financially, I want you to know.
Just, Kara?
I just wanted to, because I know we had the conversation about per pupil expenditures in district, and I'm curious if you have like a ballpark of the distinction between what we pay for students to go to South Shore Charter versus in district, how much we're paying.
Stephen would probably have that. He could probably look for that. I'm not sure off the top of your head you have that.
Depending on the charter school or people, I don't know right now, but it's something I should be able to.
Okay.
But I will say, we talked per pupil deviate, well, it's district updates. I can deviate a little bit. I shared this with Mary Beth at the Board of Selectmen's meeting last night. Norfolk Aggie is running close to 29.5 for agricultural. Ours is around 17-ish, give or take. And like I said, that's up. We're in the 14s, but to send a student to Norfolk Aggie, the tuition, not including transportation, is 29.5.
Almost double.
And we don't have, and this is where it comes to a difficult decision. I'm never going to not tell a student they can't go to a certain school. So I get a thing to say, do you approve or not? I would really have to, if I disapproved, have to justify that. And the only reason I could justify that is financial, and I'm going to lose in any type of appeal to the commissioner.
They'd say too bad.
So that being said, that's where we're at, and I don't know VOTEC's tuition. I know tuition, we have a lower enrollment in Whitman next year for South Shore, and because South Shore is also expanding, and they've kind of looked at, with Marshfield coming into South Shore, they've leveled it off a little bit, so we've lost some seats in Whitman and lost some seats in Hanson, which will help the overall town aspect of it, but that doesn't mean that students aren't going to go to Bristol Aggie or Norfolk Aggie for different things. So.
Okay.
No, go ahead, because I think you're probably going to say the same things.
I'm going to go back to your charter schools.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying.
Has anybody, so teachers at charter schools do not have to hold a Massachusetts teaching license to be employed by that school?
That's correct.
Everybody knows that?
Yep.
Is it, or the state ones?
Just show me
Right,
on the side.
but
There's different charters.
it's not the same as it is here, right? You can have a waiver for a teacher, for sure, right? But charter schools can hire teachers without a license,
Correct.
without penalty,
Correct.
right? So has
The
any...
state ones?
Yes.
Yeah, have the superintendents ever gotten together and said, you don't have highly qualified educators in your school, why are we paying more to send kids there than to educate them in our own school?
I don't know that question. There's been a lot of conversation about charter schools.
Yeah,
So we've been able to hire a few charter school teachers that are now licensed.
Yep.
Because they wanted to leave their charter school. Charter schools also don't have collective bargaining units.
great.
We do, so there's sometimes there's a safer environment in a public, in a traditional public school. But that, again, I don't want to knock a charter school, but there are some differences, and it's really good for certain kids. I just don't want to pay more for seats around that. And I've had some contact with some folks who have traditionally sent their students. One of my former students actually had his son do a tour here because he's interested in sending him here, and he's always been a charter school kid. So, I mean, I think it goes a little bit. I just don't like when they inflate seats now.
Yeah. So, it was her, and then it was me. Yeah. So, it was me. It was me.
Okay.
Thank you. And it was similar to what you were saying in terms of when we saw that we provided the programs. Ultimately, we have to educate children to compete in the world, not what we decide, but the actual world. That's why we want average education. If parents are going out to find what is averagely expected to a charter school or other places, it talks to what we need to do here, the work we need to do if they're making a choice of a charter school. So it isn't just, I'm not going to send them, it's we got to buckle down and do the work so those kids want to be here, because no parent wants them to have a friend that lives next door but goes to school somewhere else. They don't want that. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for their public local education to educate effectively and competitively. Dawn?
So I'm looking at the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education agenda I just pulled up because I'm really frustrated right now that we missed this and took our eye off this. So I'm going to ask Superintendent if anything comes across your desk in the future that you share it with the committee, because we are 10 people who could have advocated for this. And the vote was only 6-4. That is so close. The 4 people didn't believe in this, and the memo from the acting commissioner says that pursuant to charter school regulations, these charter schools can make a request to raise the maximum of their enrollment. And that's what these 6 schools did, and South Shore is there. And they made a request. And the acting commissioner at the end of the memo says, I am not recommending approval of this request at this time. So I almost, you guys know me enough, I probably would have gone in and gone to public comment and stood there. This is so important, and this is so dangerous to our future and our budget. 275 seats for the towns that support South Shore Charter.
Yeah, I can't believe that they didn't listen to the superintendents of all.
Well, it's 6-4.
I can believe that.
I know.
I can believe that because politically, there's a political push to undermine public education and put it into voucher. And this is the step, and it's more expensive, it's less effective, and I can believe it. So anytime you see this, we as those people who advocate for public education and are great at public education,
Chris is back. Chris?
So just going back to the expansion piece of it, obviously we're on the hook for whatever enrollment decides to, it kind of is what it is there. If you're adding, to almost 26, 27% additional capacity, I would imagine that there's going to be some sort of size augmentation within the building in there. Is there any, we have no liability on that. That's something that's entirely on them. Our only liability is
tuition.
If additional students decide that they want to go, we're up for tuition.
Yeah, that's it. Glenn?
Is a charter school for profit?
I don't.
Some are. This is
Okay, so
not.
of course they want more students.
Yeah, but no, those aren't. This one
Okay,
is.
This is a state charter school.
And who are these people that voted?
The Board of Education. They're
Massachusetts, separate from the charter school.
So the Board of Ed is an entity of itself.
Sure.
And then the Department of Elementary.
And they get lobbied?
And there's appointed
Okay.
people on the Board of Ed, correct. And they decline some folks.
They're appointed by different people.
Appointed, and they get lobbied, and
And the next piece,
some charter schools are for profit.
the next piece of this
I
is
get it.
the acting commissioner of DESE resigned yesterday.
Easy.
So Russell Johnson, who was the
Someone with a
interim
new
commissioner, resigned as well.
Political.
He's out on the 28th. The state is still in search of a full-time commissioner, so I don't know who's going to be in the seat after the 28th. So
Interesting.
that's where we're at. That's all I got.
Okay.
Steve, you want to come up? And actually, before you get into it, just a little bit of a budget update where we're at. I was invited to the joint meeting of the Whitman FinCom and Select Board yesterday. They were speaking, and I spoke a little bit on behalf of the district. I got a seat at the table. That we had a little bit of a disagreement with one of the Select Board members. I did. I felt I needed to speak up a little bit because we were talking a little bit about long range and an override, and it seems like the town of Whitman is going to be moving to an override. I don't want to speak for them, but that's what it seems like. There was no official vote taken, but that's what it seems like, to support at least our number that we had presented, or I presented at our February budget of the increase. So there was some conversation about that. And then there was some conversation about a plan, a 5-year plan. And, I was, called out pretty much that, I'm supposed to stick to a 5% assessment. And Don was there, a 5% assessment. And I basically said, we did a 5-year plan. We did it in 2022. And if you looked at FY26 in the 5-year number, it was projected that we were looking at a 4.7% increase of our budget this year. So 4 years ago, we were pretty on top of it, and we're at 5.36, something like that. So it was pretty decent, and that is not a 5% increase of the assessment. And so I went back and said, well, we did that, so if people wanted to see that, and I know you didn't want to agree with that, but we actually did it. And now we're projected out through 28, so you can see through 28 next year on that projection is we're looking like at a 3% increase. And then 28's a little bit different because we're adding the assessment of a new building project. But we did what we were asked by different members of the board 4 years ago, and our numbers are not that far off. So I just wanted to say to this committee that that town is looking at now an override. It looks like that. They don't have a definitive number. I told one of the select board members tonight off the record that I cannot support the contingency budget number that was presented, which would look like a $580,000 increase overall from Whitman this year when I'm looking at which would be about 1% increase of our budget. I wouldn't be able to support that publicly, and I wasn't asked to, but I'm saying this now, that has to be a different number because it's less than the 5% that we were already quoted on building in the past, okay? The next select board joint meeting of the FinCom and select board is March 25th. If anybody wants to join, I'll be there, and Beth will probably be there as well. And they have a contingency budget subgroup that's meeting, and I think Kathy Otina, the chair of the finance committee, is going to be leading that with a couple other folks. And I just wanted to shout out to the FinCom over there. The positive comments about the schools was definitely heard by me, and I wanted to share that with you. It wasn't a knock on South Shore Vocational School, but it seemed like the town really supported South Shore Vocational School in the new building, in Mr. Hickey's budget proposal, and it seems like the town necessarily doesn't support us sometimes. So I think there was some good discussion about what the schools need. A couple of the select board members that spoke were really saying the schools need more. And the schools, now it's up to the taxpayers to understand that and how it's presented, but I think there's a realization, at least verbally, that our budget is what it is. There's not a lot of fluff, and we're not adding programs. It's to sustain what we have now, to provide those programs so people aren't going to South Shore Charter. And my argument was, even though our enrollment is decreasing, our numbers are still the same as far as costs. Okay, it's not individual kids, and that the reason I lose students, it's not in elementary or middle, and the numbers that I'm getting from NESDEC are pretty decent. And NESDEC's our group that does an independent look at population and student growth. We're leveling off in the elementaries and middles, but I lose students in 9th grade to 10th, or from 8th grade to 9th grade for the vocational options, because we do have a push in our country right now for vocational ed. I do lose them to charter once in a while because they want a different experience. If we were able to sustain a budget and add programs both in the middle and at the high to make sure kids are ingrained in our district, maybe they wouldn't be looking looking for things. And again, it's not a knock on charters. If you want to go do electrical, I think South Shore Vocational is great, but if you're going to take 7 AP classes at South Shore Charter and maybe dabble in something else, I think you should, this is my personal opinion, I'll say it publicly, stay here, we have the programs, and then outside of that, there's so many post-grad opportunities to go into your trade. But the tuition for the APs, I'm offering the same thing here. So again, it was a good conversation. I want the committee to be involved. I'm hoping to hear some information from Hanson real soon about where they're at, because I'm just getting what I read in the paper, but it looks like Hanson's looking at an override as well. I just don't know numbers. I don't know specific numbers on the budgets from either town. I just know where they heard what we said, and they threw our assessment of 9.67 or whatever is in the budget book as part of the operational override, and that was the discussion. Yeah. They need one to sustain the community as well, so I think that was...
It's not just the school. I think everybody needs to know, too, with the 5%, I want to give that number that you've given me. It's a loss of 1.6 million. If we stayed at the 5% that Whitman is offering at this point.
5% is to their assessment?
The assessment.
To their assessment,
1.6 off of their assessment.
Jeff?
No.
Jeff?
No, off of our budget.
Gotcha.
Off our budget.
1.6 off of our budget.
Jeff,
So it's a killer.
Yes.
through back. So you don't get to make up arbitrary numbers and say, oh, I want to give this amount, I want that. Because we have to meet a goal. So I want to hear what other superintendents, because I'm hearing more like 7% and larger increases with these increased costs. So, I mean, we have to deal in reality. We can't deal in fluff numbers.
So again, the hard numbers that I have, and I spoke about it, again, the projections that we were looking at in 2022, we were looking at a more than a 4.5% increase to the budget. I don't want to hear assessment, because people get confused with the assessment.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of the select board members were very clear of a budget increase versus an assessment increase, which is good to hear, finally.
Yeah.
But other districts right now are in a hole. I know I'm going to quote what I heard from Abington. They're at about 5.5 this year.
Yeah.
Everybody's up this year for some reason. Healthcare costs are up. They're not exponentially up, but they're up. This is up. This is up. Special education costs are here. They're not, for us, it's not out of control. It's not a budget killer like in some districts. We're there. But everything is up. And salaries are up. And that's okay, they should be, but this is the number we have now, and revenues are not. We're resisting to expend all of our circuit breaker because we need that safety net. And I'm an advocate of not using any type of E&D this year to balance the budget, because we don't have it right now. So we need to come to grips with that. So in reality, the numbers to sustain the programs that we have here are the numbers that I presented in February. And I was very happy last night that was the number that was up on the board for an override.
Okay.
And nobody was talking about moving that number. Well, I won't say nobody, but there was no discussion, heavy discussion on that. I think it's an override question of 2 million, 2.5 million, 3 million, 3.5 million, and up from the town of Whitman. And again, just to be clear, I don't have the numbers, and once I get the numbers from Hanson, I will be very happy to discuss those with you as well.
It wasn't a school override.
No. So they were very clear about that.
Craziness has stopped,
Whitman,
right?
at least on the Whitman side, I can't speak for Hanson, at least on the Whitman side, it was very clear it was an operational override for the community.
Okay.
Because, as was even spoken, like the fire chief needs a new fire engine at some point at 1.5 million.
Yeah.
So there has to be some, and they want to stick to keeping some capital stabilizations for those things, and there was some discussion on free cash and this, and again, I don't want to get into it. You can watch the meeting. I was able to speak for a few minutes, but I did want to shout out the select board for hearing and inviting me to sit at the table and have some input, and the finance committee's task is now to figure out where that goes. So we'll be there on the 25th. We have a meeting tentatively scheduled here on the 26th. I can report back. That'll be after we present, or we certify our budget. But as we know, we send them a number by a certain date, and sometimes we've backed off of that number. Mr. Kane, who was presenting yesterday, was very upfront that the school committee dictates to the town what we send. So that was a nice, clear message. And I also want to, what was I just going to say? I lost my train of thought. The certification number, oh, and I am presenting to the FinCom. You're more than welcome. We'll post it on March 11th. Okay? And we meet here on the 12th. So Whitman FinCom has always invited us to present. I present, and they ask some questions back and forth, but they have an idea of where we're at. Ms. Otina, the chair, has sent Stephen and myself a laundry list of questions, and we're working on getting her the answers. So.
Kara?
I just had a couple of kind of thoughts and comments. My first is, as a Hanson resident, I sincerely hope and implore the Hanson Select Board and FinCom to extend a similar invitation to you, Jeff, so that there can be a conversation early in the process, and it can be collaborative. So I hope that that happens as well. Secondly, I want to reiterate, I know it's not news to anyone in this committee. Obviously, school budget is probably the largest line item in any town budget for a multitude of reasons. But I think to be mindful of, when people talk about living within our means and trimming the fat, that they're to some of the conversation tonight and in previous meetings, there are certain places that are non-negotiable that are really heavy line items in our budget. So we legally have an obligation to provide special education services, including out-of-district placement as needed, including transportation as needed, which is incredibly expensive. And it's what our students deserve, but that's a legal requirement as well. When we talk about, we don't have the ability to say no to charter school, sending kids to charter schools. So these are things that are taking for the kids, for our students in district, those are direct, that money needs to come from somewhere. And so if we do not increase our budget to account for those increasing costs, then the money will be hurting our students in some other way. So I think that that's really important. The final thing that I want to say is we are not unique in this situation. If you look at the news, just off the top of my head, Duxbury has an override going. Hanover has an override. Norwell, I read, was on $4.1 million proposed override. Hingham, I believe, is talking about an override. In Cohasset, we are not discussing an override, but the finances are tighter than they've ever been, in my experience. So this is not unique to Whitman-Hanson, and it is a legitimate challenge with, I kind of think, the state of our economy right now, but also where we are in terms of educational needs and educational costs. So that's all I had to say.
Who else? Dawn, did you have something?
Are we talking FY26 budget?
A little bit,
I wasn't
yeah.
sure if you went from
No,
district
I just wanted,
happenings
I am in the budget update, yes.
Oh, okay. Because I had a question to follow up on your opening statement, and thank you for being presenting last time. You had mentioned or said that there's no increases in staffing in the budget, but you said we are improving programming for students with the intent of filling positions needed currently on our payroll. So can you dive into that a little more or share? And it sounds like maybe there are retirements, so you are looking at using funds
We are
the best way.
We are looking at specifically one special education program and another program for teachers that are currently on leave, paid leave. So teachers that are in our budget they'll be redistributed within the school community.
Okay. Okay, so
making
supporting mandated special ed, which we want to do, and we will do, but I just wanted to know if there's any changes to our offering, where you said improving programs, so I didn't know, and you made it clear that, we're not adding world languages, and we're not expanding K through 12 related arts, but I almost want to ask why.
Yeah,
why we're not. And we looked to you for a recommendation and so forth, and we didn't make any initiatives or workshops in the committee this past summer. We didn't talk about it, and we need it. We sorely need it to be competitive and to speak to those comparative numbers. And so the money that we have, we want to use it as wisely, and I think you're doing that, and that's your initiative. One thing I noticed in the budget book too, class sizes. We have 8th grade class sizes in one school that are actually smaller class sizes than kindergarten and 1st grade class sizes. So I'm going to ask a question, if you've considered in the future or for the FY26 making any corrections there, or a recommendation to reallocate funds to any new programming that will draw in and keep students here.
Yeah, that's probably for Hanson Middle that we can't.
Well, if you're looking at Hanson Middle 8th grade,
That's what I'm looking at.
as they leave next year, if you look at the 7th grade class, they will be 8th graders next year. And they're, off the top of my head, I think it's the 8th grade class at Hanson is small. And then they leave, and it balances out in 7th grade. So looking at keeping the current staffing as is what we're looking at.
Okay.
If that answers
The seventh grade, and are these current, like this is the 7th grade this year?
Yes.
Okay, so next year it will be 8th grade. It does say that the English and math is 18.3. And we've got kindergarten and 1st grades at 20. So I know I'm splitting hairs, it's an average, I don't know the details of, the students in the classroom, but I'm asking the question, if you've made a consideration.
It's always been an issue with the sizes, class sizes of Hanson Middle versus Whitman Middle, but the problem also was the ability to put the students in. And George, you could probably explain it better, because we've had this discussion I don't know how many times, and I've talked with George. So explain why, because there's certain ways that we cannot.
Sure. So Hanson's always had less of a student population. However, because as you get to middle school, you have different certifications for staff where they have to have the certification to teach one specific subject. You really can't just drop a teacher off a team. Now, Hanson are a team of 4 teachers, which teaches English, math, science, and social studies. Hanson has gone through the pains of now having a split team they have teachers that teach 2 7th English, 2 8th English, 2 6th English, 2 7th English, and then, so that's called a split team, where you have to teach 2 grades because they didn't have enough to have a full separate team, 2 teams at each grade level. But they have smaller class size, and the problem is that if you let go of one teacher, then you don't have you raise class size in that subject that you got rid of that teacher from, because you can only teach 4 a day and then a duty period. So you can't, at Whitman Middle it's easy. You have 2 teams of 4. So you have 2 social, 2 science, 2 ELA, 2 math. So if you were to try to cut a teacher, you now lose those 4 sections. Let's say you cut an English teacher, you've just lost 4 sections. You still have a large number of kids, so now you're taking all the kids to just into 4 sections instead of 8 sections. Now, depending on the class size, those classes could be very small or those classes could be very large. It's just what happens with that class. There was a year, I'll give you Beth's, there was a year where there were 216 6th graders at Whitman Middle. So all 6th grade teachers were, yes, Beth was one of them, but were sort of grousy and complained to me every week that class size was so big. But I said, just wait, because the next year there were only 186. You still can't get rid of or add a section because it'll throw off everyone's schedule. Yeah, you got a question, Rosemary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I think my concern would be a class size no larger than, not worry so much about smaller than. After a certain point, it does equate to the ability to educate a child. So do we have a general idea of no larger than?
Sure, yes.
And what would that be?
So in elementary school,
And of course, elementary, gym could be larger. Of course.
Since 2018, we've really strived to have elementary under 25, and we're around the 20 to 21 mark.
So if we were to use Boston's numbers, Boston's no larger than 20.
I'm not Boston.
Yeah, I know you're not, but I'm just saying.
And
But they have okay. 25, go ahead. 25.
I said no larger, because when we took over, elementary class sizes were 25, 26, 28.
That's ridiculous.
So we've really worked hard to bring that down, where our relateds are up, and because, PE, art, whatever, but our elementaries are really around 21, and that's what I'm fearful of the budget not being. We would have to go up to that 25 again.
Yeah.
Our middles are around 23 to 25. In high school, we try to cap it at 25. Kevin used to have class of 28, 30, depending, because they love Mr. Kafka, but then we also have classes of 12. Like an AP, computer science is running at 12.
Yeah,
So,
it does depend on what you're teaching.
Correct. And again, we want to focus in on the lower class sizes as best we can in the elementaries for what's sustainable.
Yeah. And I was just trying to explain the current matrix that we have.
Yeah.
That's the current matrix that we have.
And thank you for that explanation. Just going back to the budget book on page 5 in the back, the current grade 8 that I mentioned, an average of 18 at Hanson Middle, the entire grade says it has 119 kids in that grade. 7th is 106, 6th is 108, and grade 5 is 96. So those are the numbers that are coming up. Whether it makes sense to maintain the staff there and keep, kindergarten and first grade higher than an 8th grade class is up to the superintendent's decision or the committee's decision to discuss. I was just looking at the numbers that were presented. As far as the 5-year capital plan and, the meeting last night, I know we have the capital plan out to, or the budget projection. Yeah, budget projection out to FY '28. But I do want to make mention that in our strategic plan, it does say that we'll have a 5-year budget projection and 5-year capital growth matrix. So if that's something you have and you can provide to us, a 5-year capital matrix, I know that Whitman FinCom will be looking for it. And I think that it's something that we should be seeing as a 5-year capital matrix and the budget projection for 5 years. I mean, it's great that we did that back in '22 out to FY '28, but we're now at FY '26, so it's really just like a 2-year projection because we're setting FY '26 right now. So I think we should be revisiting another 5 years out. And my only other comment in regards to FY '26 is that it was mentioned earlier, we're below the state average, and we do have a dropout rate of 30 kids in the past 2 years. So if you go online to DESE, there's 16 kids last year dropped out, 14 the year before. I don't understand. I don't know what 30 kids would be doing in Whitman-Hanson that didn't finish high school. But I would hope that we can go forward and begin a plan to install programs here that will keep kids. That's not just maintain. We're holding steady. We can't. Everything we added back, we should have already had. We added full day K. We should have already had it. The curriculum we're adding, we should have already had it. Yeah. The class sizes. And we don't even have an OPEB funding line in there, which we saw the audit. So there's a lot of work to do to improve our offerings.
So I'll just address the dropout piece. So students withdraw for a lot of reasons. It's not the traditional, I'm done with school. If students move and don't re-enroll somewhere, they're considered a dropout for us, and that's a problem for us. Or if they move out of state and they don't re-enroll somewhere. So some of those numbers, we do have dropouts, but it's more or less like 6 or 7 kids that after, I don't want to say each year, but after looking at our school and our community evening school, we offer an alternative diploma program. We're the only one in the area that does that. And that keeps kids here too, because it's a non-traditional path. But
these numbers are atypical. If you look back, and DESE has it year after year, 5 to 10 years ago, it was single digits. It was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you can validate that, not with names, just student number 1 through 14, just to put my concerns at ease about what's happening with students who we feel we're classifying them as a dropout.
And I will also say those numbers are post-COVID, and if you look across the state, you have more kids disenfranchised with school post-COVID and are choosing to do different things. So I can look at that again, and we talked about dropouts last year, and it is a concern. I addressed that with Dr. Jones to make sure that those are real numbers, and if they're not, they're not. If there's a time frame when students leave school and the report comes out and we have an opportunity to re-engage them, And that's what Maureen Leonard used to do in our after-school program. That's what Mr. Lynn and Mr. Chismar do now. But there is an uptick in dropouts across the state as well.
And what are we going to do to be on the cutting edge to make sure that we're going to be the
Rosemary, you need to get recognized, okay? You can't just keep talking out.
Yeah.
Keep talking out
Yeah.
today. Stop, please. Thank you.
Okay, what are we going to do? What is our plan? Because in this budget, I don't see a plan for those kids. Whatever it is in the state, we don't want one kid to drop out. And even if they move out and don't enroll, their foundation of education came from us. So if they're not enrolling somewhere else, what are we doing? So I do think this is something we shouldn't minimize, and we should, and I think that your background and your ideas, talking to you personally, could speak to this.
So I can answer that, and George and Nikki can attest to the student at-risk meetings that I personally have as a superintendent, and kids are still saying, I'm not coming back. And I've had a few this year that have been extremely frustrating because you care, and it's a kid. And you know my background, and folks around the table know my background in alternative ed, and I can't force them to come to school. During the day, at night, half day, we offer them a variety of things, and they're making an adult choice, and sometimes the parental support isn't there either. So no matter what we can do, I can't give them money to come to school, and we actually could pick them up, and we've offered in the past.
I was going to say, we did.
So we can, and again, I don't love the numbers when they hit a double digit in a percentage, and we might have not have been as effective as we can of retaining them. It's problematic, and I address it with building level administrators. But programmatically, again, I think we have a solid program within our high school of activities, the courses that kids can achieve success in, even if they're a marginal student or a struggling student. We have our WIN block for right now, which is beneficial for every student, and our after-school activities are there for them to engage if needed. And then we have the fail-safe of the community evening school, and we have students here that are 21. And it's taken them that long, And again, most of you are invited, or all of you are invited. Some of you have come to those Thursday night graduations, and you see, I remember one woman who had her baby there at graduation. So we do as many things as we can, but I hate to say it, I can't get every kid, and they're not on the same page. And then we can have that conversation, and I've had conversations with students that I had in my past at the local adult establishment having a beverage, and they're like, I wish I would have listened to you. I understand, but they were making a choice due to economics at home, lack of support at home, whatever issue, drugs and alcohol. And we do send students, we have students at Independence Academy now who have some substance abuse issues. We pick up the cost of that. So there are different pieces to try to engage them. Is it the best? I think it's pretty good. I think it's better than most of my surroundings. So and people ask us to send their kids here for our community evening school, and I'm resistant to take them because of the fact that they become ours, and if they drop out from there, they become a dropout for us. So that's where we're at.
Kara?
I'm thinking a little bit about vulnerable populations, and I think this speaks quite a bit to the budget conversation as well, because I think, it was not very many years ago when, as a parent, I was standing out there and screaming that we needed to approve more adjustment counselors in our elementary and middle schools, and getting some resistance from the communities, to be honest. And I think especially post-COVID, the mental health crisis in our youth, from elementary through high school and beyond, is staggering. And for better or worse, schools are often, for many students, the only place that they might have access to supports around that. And so I think I'm grateful we have the staffing we have now around that. I still think that we could always use more, and that staffing might be adjustment counselors, that staffing might be transition program staff, that staffing might be classroom teachers, so that you have more individual contact with your students. I also think it goes to some of the conversations we've had in recent months about just the accessibility of this building for students outside of the academic day, and creating a sense of community and belonging. And all of those things come with a price tag, but I think are critically important to student success. So I think we can't underestimate their value when we talk about things like this.
Thank you.
Stephen, ready?
Steve? Sorry, Stephen.
And Stephen's going to be looking for 2 votes today.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. So I'll just get right into the second quarter report. A lot of this is repetitive from the first quarter, which we just did recently, so I'll skip through this a little bit and just kind of hit the high points. We are still working on our E&D certification. We need the votes on the line item transfers that we're going to do after this tonight in order to finalize the 24 balance sheet, and then that will get us moving with certification. So that is that part. The only difference in revenues, and I talked about this during budget, is the Medicare reimbursement is now expected to be $168,000, which is a reduction of just over $75,000 for revenue. I don't think that this is going to impact our total revenue for the year. This is okay, but I just wanted to note that. And then our that's a typo. Quarter 2 expenditures, not quarter 1. My apologies for that. I've provided into those same expense categories just to try to give it to you in a higher level. So year-to-date expended through the end of December is just over $32.1 million. We have $6.2 million encumbered and a remaining budget of $24.5 million, kind of halfway through. So, just in analyzing these numbers, when you get through December, you're close to that halfway point, but we do still have a lot of salary. We have pay that is extended throughout. It's not the summer because there's multiple checks that are provided in June, but it is kind of, extended throughout the school year. So I believe that we're in good shape. We will continue to analyze these numbers and make sure that, we don't have any risk for the end of the year. And there will still need to be journal entries and transfers done in between individual lines, which is, common every single year. My hope is I'm not going to be waiting a whole year to be coming to you for those, as I am tonight for the FY24. So I've provided the line item detail for the expenditures and also for the revenue through the second quarter. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on the first quarter report.
Yeah, go ahead.
Medicare reimbursement, is there a reason that it is lower?
Yeah, so it was in 24, we received an additional payment that was for FY23. And so that kind of inflated what our 24 amount that we received was. And the 24 amount was used for the budget of 25. And so it was just kind of overstated, honestly. It's still a projection because we don't know.
Gotcha. And then follow up, so the current proposed budget that passed Congress that is going to give a significant hit to Medicare and Medicaid and things like that, are you anticipating that might go away? Because that's a reimbursement we receive federal. Correct?
So for these types of services, I believe that it would be hard for it to go away. Okay. That doesn't mean, we're hearing crazy things, right? So who knows what's truly going to happen? I don't believe that this $200,000, we'll just call it, is in jeopardy.
Okay. But if it is, we have to pay for it. That would increase our budget. We would not be reimbursed.
That's correct.
Okay.
It doesn't increase our budget. It reduces the revenue.
Yes. Thank you.
Dawn?
Sure. Stephen, you have that under the revenues, regional transportation reimbursement is still unknown. We do know that the FY24 regional transportation was reimbursed at 87%. So can you speak to what's unknown? Is it just the fact that we're waiting for the payment, or is there any jeopardy of us receiving the reimbursement?
So there's no jeopardy of us receiving it. The reimbursement amount is unknown, and it's typical that we don't know. So there's an estimated payment that's made, like a halfway payment, and then they make up the difference once they determine exactly what's left. And they really normally don't do it until they receive all of the reimbursement requests, because they have a bucket of money, but the costs of individual districts are increasing, and so that pot doesn't grow because our costs are increasing.
Right. Have we gotten the, you mentioned, what did you
So
call it?
we have not
Estimated
received, I do not believe we have received, and that was because of our FY24 end-of-year report not being submitted on time.
Okay. I did double check because we are in FY25 with the state budget, so that was approved by the conference committee, and last year's regional transportation in the state budget was 97.5 million, and the legislature approved it up to 99 million. So the good news is that it didn't go down, right? But like, to your point, the proportional over all the districts that are submitting expenses will determine.
That increase is.
Doesn't necessarily mean we may see an increase.
Correct.
I get it, but at least overall, the funding is there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That is done?
Oh, actually, sorry, I know, you know.
No, I know, that's why I said, is that it's done?
Page 16.
Yes.
Under the custodial services, it says line 5330, district-wide facilities custodian salaries. That description is different than what we had approved, because it's my understanding that line 5330 is the district ops coordinator. So is there any explanation for the change in calling it custodian salaries now? We don't typically use custodian.
Yeah, so there's a lot of naming conventions from the Excel sheet and the chart of accounts to then what was entered into Munis that still needs some correction. So that's the best that I can explain, that it's likely just different, and where that title kind of pulls from within Munis, there's multiple different categories, and that's the reason it's pulling like multiple sections to create that. But I will review that. We looked at that too on the 26 when we did the 26 budget. There's some things, some naming of accounts that need to change.
Okay, yeah, because I know like our quote-unquote custodians fall under the SJ services.
Yes.
Contracted clean, that's the large line, 1.6,
yes.
yeah, right. So I wouldn't want to confuse that with like some separate custodian. Okay, this is just the revenue report, right, not transfers yet? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
we good with that.
You want to give a motion first?
Yeah, can we get a motion just to approve the report?
Okay, what are we doing? Just the update?
Just we're putting that we received it or that it's correct?
No, just that you've received it, just that
we've received
you know that the committee has received the Q2 revenues and expenditures to date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, could I have a motion?
I motion.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, Steve. Now the transfers.
All right, so there are two different categories here of transfers that we will review. The first is transfers that are within DESI functions. So if you want to go to page 11, you will see the DESI function codes in the middle of the page, and there's the number of transfers, so it's 227 total transfers. You can see 19 transfers that are between the function codes 1000 and 1999, and then so on and so forth. So what I'm looking for is approval of transfers in the amount of $4,698,534.42 within those DESI function codes.
Okay, could I have a motion to discuss?
So moved.
A second? Second. Second, Rosemary. Okay, discussion, please.
I do have some questions.
I'm sure.
Stephen, if I may just ask for some question on page 5. Page general supplies, account 2430. So the net is that we're transferring into these lines.
So you're transferring from and then also to. So it's basically a debit and a credit. So what is happening is a line that was overspent, we are taking money from a line that was underspent within the same function to offset those amounts.
Okay. So we're, in essence, adding to the supply line, right, to pay for supplies?
So, like, in the transfer to amount, you are adding. You're adding to an account.
Okay,
The
right.
transfer from account, you're removing.
Okay, that's, I'm thinking of it the right way. To really understand some of this movement, I'm looking at the budget book too, because, and this is FY24 budget, right? So
This is FY24.
We have to
and
remember.
This is why, like, this right here is why it's hard for me to give you actuals last week, because until I make these transfers, the actuals that I would have given you would have been wrong. Is that, like,
right. So my thought process is we've got to, these transfers impact the actual spending from FY24. And I think to my comment in the past was, how do we know what we're budgeting for if we don't know what we spent? And this helps us understand what we know we're actually spending in FY24.
100%.
Right. So to that point then, when I look at the general supplies history, in FY24, it was $155,000. Then it was appropriated for this current year that we're in FY25 at $130,000. And now it's proposed at $108,000. So it's going down, right? But we had to add more to cover the expenses in FY24.
Not really. You're just taking from like one school to another here. You're transferring. We're not adding anything. The budget was what it was. We're just transferring from one line to another. So we're not adding anything. We're not adding additional dollars.
Okay, but does the transfer tell us that, just for the top line, Indian Head is transferring in
5,000, correct.
5,368. But if the budget was 10,000 for that year, does that mean they needed 15,000?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's what I was saying. So this is added to the 155, but we're budgeting right now in our FY26 proposed only 108,000 for supplies.
I'd have to go back and look though, because there's multiple supply lines and there's items that were charged, to different lines. So I am confident in the FY26 budget that was put forward with the line items. We've moved some things district-wide. We've moved some things around into different categories based on what our actual spending is.
Okay, that's not the way it looks to me, because now Indian Head General Supplies, if we approve this FY26 as it is, they're getting $7,000. Well, they had 10 and they needed an additional 5, so that's 15,000. That's the way I'm seeing.
I also think what took place, and we have to remember, was we were not in Munis until March of last year, in what you're looking at. So a lot of this was done post-brief, we weren't there. So when we went back to Munis, we had to rebuild Munis from the chart of accounts. That was different than the Munis that we had pre-breach, except most of the paperwork we had naming all of the different lines became different when we went into the new version of Munis. So what you sometimes see is what was spent out of a line or what was attached to a line. That was in the old version of Munis. So when you come back to the new version of Munis, you have to make those changes. And what happened last year was we went the whole year not Munis, trying to rebuild Munis, starting with Munis. I had weekly calls with Munis, and there were 3 other people, 2 of them no longer are with us, to try to get this back on board. When we tried to get it back on board, then we had to say, for all the spending that we did in the Excel format of how we kept all of our bills, how closely would it relate to what we had and then what we now currently have as new. So we had a thing called Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone was translatable document that went from the old account numbers to the new account numbers. But if someone wrote an account and paid for something and wrote X account number, it might have gone to a line that then gets changed and cleaned up. So now we move to this budget that we're trying to figure out. So we're sorting all the bills and invoices, we're putting them in the right accounts, we need these transfers. That part's done, we have a new munis now that we're operating on this current year, and then as we move forward from now on, that we're trying to make sure everything else lines up. So it's mucky, don't get me wrong, but the bottom line is that the budget wasn't overexpended, it was just had needed to be moved more often than not because we kept rebuilding something new from something old that had a different variation. I'm not an accountant, I don't claim to be, I didn't stay at Holiday Inn last week. At some point I was called in trying to get this thing off the ground, and we put people together to try to get to where we are now.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not coming across to say that something was over.
This wasn't here, that's all I'm trying.
Yeah, my point isn't to point out something overexpended. I'm actually glad we're spending money on supplies, because my point too is, I wish we could normalize not asking parents for supply lists, right? Like, put it in our budget, be buying these. So I'm glad that we are. I'm just trying to look at the transfers and set our budget right for what we should be funding.
If I could. And I was going to just say, I think Stephen's been able to do that by vetting out those numbers, and I think he's on, we're in a good spot with his numbers.
And I think to George's point, the way the process was working on paper when we weren't in Munis, there wasn't a great purchase order system. It's hard to track. And so a lot of times there's purchases that are being made before a purchase order was created. And so then you still have to pay the bill. If X school called Scholastic and ordered $5,000 worth of something, we have to pay for it, right? And so it might not have been totally in line with what that budget amount was. But now that we've seen that through 25, I think we have a better idea, and everything's loaded into the system. And it's still hard because what we've put into Munis now for 24 are journal entries essentially, because it didn't happen in real time. So you don't get all of the data out that you want to, where right now I can see exactly what vendor was paid and how much and when was the purchase order created and all of those items. And so it's much easier to say this was for the nurse's office and it belongs in this account number. It doesn't belong in the principal's general supplies account. And there was a lot of that kind of happened. Not because somebody tried to do something wrong. It was the process was very difficult without Munis.
All right.
I don't know if that helps.
I had a few others, but I can table those and maybe even email you them if that's okay, just to clarify.
We just need a vote tonight, that's all.
Just before we do vote.
So I don't want to shut you off if those questions are okay, but we're going to need a vote tonight because we need to certify this so we get it to the state and certify E&D.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there may be one is just because like high school co-curricular salary, it's having a transfer out of 92,000, but the budget was 95. And I want to believe that high school,
They got paid.
they got paid, but the number movement shows otherwise. So,
Yeah, so that staff member was charged to a different account.
yeah.
And so now we're moving the money in order to cover that
Well, God bless you.
staff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to get a general idea of, anytime I see other, it's the high school other expenses, what kind of?
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on 12, I think. No, 5, sorry.
Page 5.
So anytime we have other expenses with large amounts, just a general idea of what the other expenses are. So what would fall
32,
under-
the 32,000 one.
Yeah,
is
the
that what you're talking
32. I'm just asking.
So I don't know exactly what that is, but we use other expenses for something that typically doesn't fit into a general supply or a service. And so,
So when I was the high school principal, that used to be a line item of $60,000.
Okay.
We tried to make sure graduation came out, but that might be a line item for Independence Academy. That might be a line item for travel for someone in district.
Okay, true.
At the high school. I mean, there's
it could be rentals, it could be like porta potty rentals for, an event, like not that that's 32,000, but there's a variety of something that's not contractual services. It's not somebody doing something for you, and it's not a supply.
Okay, but you would have a different line item for
So again,
Academy.
when I inherited this high school in 2010, the other expenses was like 60,000, but that included graduation, and so we tried to break it out a little bit, so there was a little bit more consistency of what that actually
I know what that $32,000 was.
Okay, go ahead, tell me.
So what took place was during the Innovation Pathways grant last year, it was the first time we received it from Innovation Pathways, so we were trying to get some of the, in a whole supply, we got these kits for the medical science classes that they're going to have, but at the end of the day, Desi said that that wasn't available, so we took that money, they paid it through the other expenses, and then they put other expenses that were applicable into the grant, so there was not an offset. But I only know that because it came from my office. There's jumps of the hell you can do. So I said, okay.
So other expenses. Okay, thank you. Sandy.
Good thing George is here.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay, so we already had a motion, and we had a second, so we're going to go to the vote. So how many, all in favor of approving the within function transfers, please raise your hands. Okay, unanimous, you got your vote, Stephen.
All right, I got one more.
You got one more?
So last page of the paper is page 3 of 3. This is interfunction. So this is going in between. So we try to move as much as we can move within a function because that's where the budget should stay, right? So we do that with as much as we can, but we had $2,255,562.39 of transfers that are going in between different funds, and you see that on page 3 of 3. So I also need a vote to approve the interfunction budget line item transfers for FY24.
All right, can I have a motion? Motion, and a second?
Second.
Okay, and discussion. Nobody? Okay, all in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it, well done. Subcommittees.
Okay, Regional Agreement Committee.
We met tonight before this meeting. One of the big items was the lease agreement, like the language around leases. We've been sending it, Jeff has been sending it back and forth to council, and we think we finally have something that will work. So the proposal is to put it in a document so it looks nice, and then have it brought back to the respective committees to be, not voted on, I guess, because we're not voting on it piece by piece, but just to show you all what we were talking about. And then we spent a lot of time talking about transportation, which next meeting we need to be on the agenda to share that conversation. It's not an update, it's more of a bigger committee discussion. We can talk about that.
Okay.
And so that's that. We meet again March 26th. So.
Just to add a little bit, we're not going to have a regional agreement done for this town meeting. So the steps are, we trying to formalize the document with some input. The committee has to approve it. It goes to the boards of the select boards of both towns. They kind of have to approve it or kick it back to the committee. Then it has to go to the commissioner for approval. Then it goes to town meeting.
So our goal is next town meeting.
We're looking at 26 to have some completion.
Okay. All right, the next is the Whitman Middle School Building Committee. We met virtually yesterday it was just a quick meeting because we had been given information about ad alternates for the building where we have come under budget. And some people wanted to take another look at it before, so we added a couple of weeks and we had a virtual meeting to vote, and we voted not to do the ad alternates on the building. So now they were going to get with the general contractor and get all his signatures. And our next meeting is March 25th. At that meeting, they're going to hopefully tell us when we're breaking ground.
Right. Did we share with the committee that we're under budget?
Yeah, that's the part I want to hear more about that. You just glassed right over
Well, I don't know what you're supposed to say, because things can change.
I don't remember what meeting we had.
As of now.
As of right now, we're $15 million under budget.
Well, we didn't do it here.
You haven't even broken ground.
The subcontractors and the contractors came in very
They came
low.
in very low, and a lot of it is because when we did when they did the estimates years ago, it was basically during COVID, post-COVID, and all that time, so prices were up, and so they came in a lot lower, so we're really thrilled with that. So, hopefully it'll stay like that, but hopefully break ground in April and start the process, so that we'll see some movement in the back of this building. Yes.
You guys are doing it.
Does that money that we are under budget right now, is that off of our money that's coming from the state?
It's both. It's both. It's the share. It's the same. It's a split. Like
They're not going to be like, hey, well, you're right there. We'll give you the whole thing.
in other words,
They'll look at the whole cost.
the original amount was about 135 million. It's down to 120 million. So now the state will only reimburse us again whatever percentage it was, and so, the town is not getting 15 million, but in a sense we are, because that's the percentage. But, it'll come down the price a lot. That brings down a lot of money.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
People will be
Millions.
very happy to hear that.
Okay.
Everybody's tired.
Okay.
including
Yeah,
the
everybody's talking.
Everybody's tired. So we'll just pass over.
Okay, we're going to pass over
No
executive.
public comment?
None.
Okay.
There's no public here except those two over there.
Yeah, it was just my contract.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion?
Second, okay, all in favor? All right.
Thank you,
We'll
folks.
see
Good
you
meeting.
in
Well,
March.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep.